Welcome back to iHeartRadio. So bad it's good. Today, I am so I don't think excited is the word, but I am so curious to talk to our next guest. I participated in a docu-series for Discovery Plus called House of Hammer, and it is a 3-part docu-series. I've seen the first 2 parts, and it is just truly it's really incredible. It's really just, I mean, it's very nerve-wracking. The story that's being told is generational. It's not just about Armie Hammer. It is about the Hammer family. And we are lucky enough to talk to somebody. First off, her book is amazing, Surviving My Birthright. You've got to go check that out. You can even do it on audiobook, you guys. But I want to talk to her about this docu-series that I think it is well worth your time to watch. Casey Hammer, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Casey, how are you holding up today? Like I can't imagine talking about trauma like this so much, and especially this week when this thing comes out. Are you okay?
Yeah, I mean, that's a funny question, Ryan.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's when you see the result. When I watched House of Hammer, I've watched it a couple times now, and it's powerful, and it really focuses on victims and multi-generational abuse and accountability and consent and all the things that go into wealthy people, especially men, behaving badly and getting away with it and thinking they're above the law. So I mean, again, it's when you see the end result, it's traumatizing for me to watch it, and I'm not going to pretend that it's like, yay, it's tragic. It's hard to watch, and I have a feeling that a lot of people will be tuning in for whatever reasons, maybe entertainment value, but by the end of the 3 hours, which drop all at once so you can binge it, you're going to come away with a whole new impression of what you just saw, because again, it's pretty horrific. And for you, Casey, to be able to see that and not voice or shout or do something, it would be kind of crazy.
The documentary, the docuseries does a really great job of showing us the family portrait. Of course, the entrance point is Armie Hammer, of course. And just so you know, I used to be in acting class with Armie. I knew him fairly well. And so when all of this stuff broke, it was very alarming in so many ways, just because I also do a podcast about pop culture. And all of a sudden, pop culture and entertainment were intersecting with these very intense subject matters. And then when we bring your story into it, is that if you could just tell everybody, Armie Hammer was, I mean, just a hugely wealthy individual. You talk about the series Succession. You could only watch 4 episodes of it because it was just too real. But the family lineage is, can you go, it was Armie was your grandfather, right? And then your father was
Julian was my father, and he was my grandfather's only child, and plus a male. And then there was my brother, and then there was Armie and his brother. So again, it was a male dominated family. Women were replaceable. They were ornaments. They were disposable. I mean, I was told from an early age, just look pretty, be camera ready, say the right things, go out into the world and don't mess up, and we'll take care of you for the rest of your life. So
yeah, you were at an event with Princess Di and Prince Charles. Like, I mean, there were all of these events, which they have footage of, you guys, where it was, you showed up, you looked pretty, you were hobnobbing with the wealthiest of the wealthy, and that your family, especially in terms of Los Angeles history, is so huge. So it must have been wild to grow up, let alone all of the trauma that went along with that.
Well, back then too, there was no social media. So again, image was everything. So when you left the I want to say safety of your home, but my home was not safe. But when you went out to the world, you were scrutinized, and this was by your own family. You were recorded, you were filmed, you were everything, your image, everything was controlled by my grandfather's narrative. Because remember, this is a man who wanted to get the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, again, his reputation was everything. He hosted the royalty from all countries and presidents and movie
He
stars.
wanted a legacy. I mean, and you guys, the Hammering Museum is a huge part of Los Angeles. I mean, like, what he invested in, and also, I mean, just so many interesting aspects to this man. But you said he would spy on everybody. He would kind of keep everybody under tabs. I mean, what do you think your grandfather would think after watching something like this?
To be honest with you, it's you almost have to laugh, because he had his own production company that would follow us around. So everything, and it was always edited and always to the story that he wanted told.
Wow.
And a lot of times we knew the facts behind closed doors that were never discussed. So when, people watch this series and they see the abuse and just the horrific behavior, and the fact that, I was 11 years old holding a phone book while my father was shooting at me. I mean, that was just normal everyday activity for me. So again, it was all about, and Ryan, I think this speaks to abuse on all levels, because it doesn't necessarily just have to be the physical aspects of it. Mental abuse is just as powerful, because what it is it's mind control. It's people trying to take charge of everything you think and do and feel, and you think that that's the only way to get loved, or that's, you're searching for validation and love, and you keep putting yourself in harm's way because you think that they love you, they can't hurt you. And it's also evident, in the docuseries, where I'm in my 30s after my grandfather passed away. And when I gave up my career to babysit my father so that he wouldn't blow his brains out, and he's holding a loaded .357 Magnum to my temple every hour to make sure that
he would
I'm
wake
not,
you up. He was on methamphetamine. He would wake you
Yes.
up every hour. You guys, some of the stuff is just so intense. And that's why I say it's so well done, but it is intense. I can't imagine what it was like living through that. You also made a point earlier, and the documentary does as well, is that, women, in the world, but especially women in your family, it's just very interesting how you have been used as props by various Hammer men leading up to even Army, and how he used men. When you started hearing about all the Army stuff, you had already published your book in 2015, I believe. I mean, were you kind of like, oh my God, it's happening again? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, what happened with the book? Basically, I was writing it as a journal, as a healing for me, to help empower myself and make sense of what had happened in my life. Because again, my mother knew everything that was going on, and she didn't come to my defense or keep me safe. So I had no one to bounce this off of. So that's how the book started. And then I self-published, and I controlled the narrative. So it was almost like I did it to get that copy and hard print to be able to hold and say, I'm validated because I feel empowered. This is my story. And then every now and then someone would find it and comment on how it helped them. And I thought, wow, that's really amazing. That makes it worth it. And then I was working in San Diego as a kitchen designer at Home Depot last year. And one of my coworkers is like, you better get on TikTok. Someone called the Zen Blonde is blowing you up. And
you guys, this is one of the funniest. Well, I mean, I hate to say there's not many funny moments in this, but one of the actual moments that I did chuckle with is that you were like, I'm blowing up on TikTok. Like, what is this? And Lauren, our friend Lauren Zen Blonde, who we'll be talking to as well, she had posted this wonderful series taking you guys through her book. And she was doing it like just on top of it. And it started exploding like social media does. And this is years after you had written this book and released it. It must have been wild to hear this.
It was wild because I really watched in 2 hours her live stream reading my book. It was about 14 videos that went viral. And if you go back and watch any of them, it's like she can't talk fast enough. It's like she's like,
yeah, she was so excited about the whole
and was recapping my life, and like, you're never going to believe this one and this one. And all of a sudden I went from 5 followers on TikTok to 5,000. And in that moment, I realized the impact of social media, but I also realized that my life was changing, and it was really scary because I didn't know what was about to happen. You have to understand, when I self-published, I controlled that. This was out of my control. And like I said, I was living a quiet life in San Diego, making people happy, doing fabulous kitchens, right? And it's like, now all of a sudden, I think the universe stepped in, and there's a point in your life where you have a choice what you do with what's given to you. And in that moment, it was, all right, I'm going to go with this ride and take this roller coaster drop down and see where it ends up. I want to advocate for victims, and I want to, empower them and help them heal. So when Army's misdeeds and all his things started happening, I got reached out to a lot by the press, especially after the Zen Blonde outed me. And it was one of those moments where I didn't want to be a soundbite for his implosion, because he would do that on his own, right? I wanted, if people wanted to talk to me, I didn't want it to be about Army. I wanted to be about why I wrote the book and why I want to, bring awareness to it. So again,
and I want to clarify that to the audience as well, you guys, is this isn't a, and the docuseries doesn't paint it as like some kind of fame grab or something like that. I love what you said, is that this really truly should bring awareness. Like you said, this talks about consent. This talks about how women are used in this country. This talks about the power of wealthy men. It talks about so many important issues. And I do believe, its heart is in the right place.
And you know what, Ryan, especially when you see the victims come forward in House of Hammer that wanted to be a part of it, they're smart, intelligent, successful women that got sucked into this vacuum of craziness, mind control, manipulation. And no matter what level it entered, it was still haunting that anybody can get sucked into this. So again, it's like,
the ego on these men. I kept thinking about I deal with a lot of Real Housewives and reality shows, and I always joke about the ego, but watching this docuseries, I'm seeing every one of these men, I know this is your family, but every one of these men had such huge egos. Even Army, for somebody that high up and it's that amazing of a possibility of the career and legend he could make of himself, still would go into DMs and be reckless and just keep pushing the line further and further and further. And and I know it goes into BDSM a little bit, but this is not even exactly BDSM, you guys. Like it really went past a certain point. But I do really appreciate that the docuseries really handles all of that delicately.
And again, you have to remember that in my family, they got away with things, and it was covering up the crime that was even worse and more powerful and strategic. Like I comment about my grandfather ran our lives like a chessboard. And that was when I was young, my father taught me how to play chess when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And that was, if you could beat him, you got $50. So as a little kid, you were like, I want to play chess every day, because it was all about strategy and your next move. So it was always being ahead of the other person. So that's what we were trained with early on, and not knowing why, but that goes into every aspect of your life.
It speaks about the power of money. Your father at one point killed a man, and there was money given, and $50,000 in money that Armand paid off, and it went down to manslaughter and not murder, and things like this. It just shows you how much money and power can affect things, and it's really scary. Was there any part of you that was scared to do this docuseries, to speak out even further, even though you had already written the book?
Absolutely. I've been threatened my whole life in this family. So again, it's one of those things though, where you have to say, you know what, I'm not going to live in fear. If something happens to me, it happens to me. But if I go out affecting one person by the story I'm telling, then it was worth it. And the minute you give into fear and you start being terrified or changing your behavior, they win. They take the power. And I refuse to give my power away to any hammer ever again. So
this is a lifelong journey and struggle for you at this point.
Exactly.
This is surviving your birthright. I gotta say, I was even scared. I'm in the first part, you guys. I don't know, and I speak to a couple of things, but I don't even know. Like, I started getting weird threats all of a sudden. Somebody said I got filler, you guys. I've never gotten filler in my life, and that's just hurtful, right? Casey, come on. No, but it's weird. Like, I was like, wow, people are out there that like Army so much and Timothée Chalamet so much that they want to say something. I'm like, you haven't even seen this yet. You haven't even given it a shot to like tell the story or to listen to the story that they're telling.
Exactly. And if that's the lead in, if that's what gets eyeballs in, and, you know, if you can even change a handful of those people, even though it's not really important. I mean, the importance is the victims and how we can empower them and help them heal and put a stop to any behavior like this ever happening again and making people accountable. I mean, then we've done our job. And again, House of Hammer, I'm so proud to be a part of that, and what the producers did and all the people that came forward and supported the series. It's like, it's really powerful. And I know that it's going to make a difference. And, you know, when you've seen all three of them, you come away and you just like your jaw's on the floor. And it's almost like, wait, I need to watch it again. There's way too much information. I need to digest it. And you just don't believe what you're seeing. But again, I'm here to say it's not Hollywood scripted. This is like real life. This is my life.
I always say that, like, everybody says like movies are so ridiculous. And I'm like, real life is even more ridiculous and scary than movies can be. And you lived a true, like, it's just a very scary thriller. And some of these scenes, you guys, especially in the second episode, really, I mean, the army stuff is fascinating, but I really want people to, like, the history of this family is where it starts to really get me, and to imagine what you had gone through, you know, like when your parents split up, and you know, your brother goes with your dad and you go with your mom, and then they paint scenes of you coming back with your dad, and there's like women and there's drugs, paraphernalia laying everywhere. How scared were you as a little girl walking into that scenario?
You don't think of it as fearful because you think your father's always going to take care of you. What's scary is that when the police would show up, oh, Arm & Hammer's son. And they would be like, you know what, Julian, keep it down, maybe turn the music down. I mean, we lived at the top of Pacific Palisades, and my father had a 7-foot tiki that sat in the yard that had lighted eyes and smoke coming out its mouth. I mean, this is how ridiculous, and maybe people don't think that's so ridiculous nowadays, but back then in a very elite neighborhood where people just didn't do that. I mean, my father was all about making a big splash, and then my grandfather would have to come around and put out the fire. But again, it was my grandfather's name opened a lot of doors and a lot of power, and people looked the other way, like being pulled over by police. You just let them know who you are, and you know, you move on. It's being as a child raised in that and seeing how that opened doors. It was again, but then you had to go home to the scary stuff and the dark stuff. I mean, my family history, which you see in House of Hammer, it's really dark and twisted and
yeah. You guys, it's very dark and twisted. In fact, I've only seen the first two parts, and it leaves at such a really gripping climax with what you say at the very end of episode 2 that I emailed. I was like, I need to see episode 3 now. I need to make sure Casey's okay. I need to make sure, and I want to see how they all tie it in. Can you give us any, can you let us know? And by the way, this will be out after this actually airs, so you guys will know, but do you get to meet any of Army's victims? Do you get to, I mean, how involved did you get with some of these ladies that came forward?
I mean, it was nice in a sense that it was my story that I was telling, and they became a part of it. So it was almost like watching them share their story. And again, in episode 3, when you've watched all 3 episodes, you'll get a lot of answers to questions. But just seeing how brave they were and are to come forward like that, your heart goes out to them. And again, it's like something when you have a shared experience in life and you can speak to someone who's experienced that or witnessed that and can empathize with that. It means a lot when you can look into someone's eyes and hear them. And that's really all they're looking for, is to be heard and acknowledged. And I think that's the key, and one of the points that House of Hammer will bring you to, I hope.
Yeah, I know. It's very frustrating to me how I feel like we view women in this country, and especially every time we say we're going to listen and then we kind of don't. And then it's just another kind of fascinating story on this. To get present day, I mean, I remember when this story really started breaking, I mean, so long ago now, like around Christmas time in January and all of this stuff. And it really spread like wildfire about all these rumors and the cannibalism aspect of this, all these sensational things, when we had all of this actual proof of all of this stuff that had happened in the past away from Army, that it's like, wow, when you piece all of these things together, which the docuseries does a really good job at doing, it becomes even more frightening and heavy, because, it gives motive, it gives all of these things for building the perfect beast in a way. And I hate, I don't mean to say that sensationally, but it is scary when you start. I mean, I remember hearing this stuff and going like, dude, I thought Army was going to be a politician. I thought he was going to run for like office one day. And especially after he was with Elizabeth. And I was like, wow, he's definitely going this way in his life. And then for all of this to come out was just, but also all the rumors and the social media on top of it, it became so sensationalized. Where do you think we are now, present day? Or I kind of think like, this guy, he will definitely work again. Like I thought for a second, like, I don't really believe in cancellation, or I don't really think it actually happens. Do you think he will get back to his former glory at all?
To be honest with you, Ryan, I don't know. I mean, again, it's not something I'm focusing on, in a sense of, again, my purpose is to shine a light on, advocating for victims and survivors, and continuing my journey with maybe doing TED Talks or writing more books or doing something that really puts that positive spin out in the world, to let people know that, there is a safe space that they can come forward. So again, I just know that growing up, all of my family could have been politicians. You talk to anybody, anytime any one of my family members walked into a room, because they were larger than life, all of them, handsome, bubbly, politically, correct, in a sense of, you just love them, you gravitated toward them, their energy. And so again, when you have someone like myself talking for the last 61 years, in a sense of, well, I don't know if what you're saying or what you're seeing is accurate, they look at me like I'm the crazy one that should be locked up. So again, it's all relative, but we were taught how to do PR and how to spin it and how to portray ourselves out in the world, so that people are starting to stand up and take notice of what's happening. And again, it's like with the Me Too movement, right? It took a couple people to come forward and be able to share their experiences, that all of a sudden everyone started paying attention and shining a light. I mean, like you, I'm sure, when someone new comes into the forefront, you're like, no, I never thought, right? But hey, you can't get away with it anymore. So it's almost like there needs to be a Me Too for home as well, for like people. Just because your parents gave birth to you and pretend to love you, it doesn't mean that they can do whatever they want to you. So it's kind of, right now, it's about holding people accountable. Like, it's not, you can't get away with it anymore. And I don't care how much money you have and how much privilege or how much power, it's not going to work, especially with social media. And that's where I applaud the good that social media does do, because they really shine a light quickly, effectively, and in a huge way on issues that really have been buried in the past.
Yeah. And as long as they can do it in that correct way and not just spread gossip, I totally agree with you. This is a 3-part docuseries. I was like, I thought it was 2 parts at first, you guys. And I was watching the second part and I was like, wait a sec, there's only 7 minutes left. What the heck is, I was like, this is ridiculous. And then I found out there was a 3rd part. I mean, but I feel like the story could actually even keep going in some ways. I mean, I was so fascinated with the actual family stuff that I feel like it was just the tip of the iceberg. Because I was even like, Armin being a Russian Jew, then you have Catholicism that gets brought into it later. There's so many different avenues that I just found so fascinating. What are the qualities, besides learning how to be like PR, like in your life? What do you take positively from your family?
This just whets your appetite. There is so much more to be told. We only had 3 hours to tell this story. So again, there's a lot more that can be said. And again, people are going to be fascinated by the history of the hammers. I mean,
Yeah.
things like bringing communism to America. I mean, again, it's like you're wrapping your head around it. Well, in the docuseries, you see some of the people that were voice on the phone with my grandfather that you just kind of shake your head and be like,
JFK
what?
makes an appearance in this docuseries. You guys, I was like, wait a sec, what? And he was like, hey, and Armin's like, I'm glad to talk to you again, buddy. And I'm like, what? I'm like, it was like it was nothing. Like it was like, of course, the president. And there's a great quote in there of like, why didn't you run for president? It's like there's not enough power in it for me.
Right. When I asked him as a child, because I saw him
Yeah.
wielding all this power and me thinking that president was the biggest thing. And he was like, no. I mean, he was the only private citizen that could land his private plane in Russia and China. You know, all the US presidents, you know, looked to him for aid. I mean, he was behind everything, Ryan. And it's frightening to realize that someone had that kind of power and he thrived on it. And he lived for that moment.
I mean, if you think of the political landscape even now, there's obvious connections that you can make just in the terms of power and all. I mean, it really, every aspect of this is fascinating. As we start winding down here, I mean, would you ever consider writing another book? I mean, I think this is the tip of the iceberg. And I was like, oh, and it's so weird, you guys. I've expressed this before, when something is real and then you're also like, entertained or titillated by it. It's like a weird feeling because these are very real like issues that happen to women and like really scary stuff. But at the same time, I was kind of on the edge of my seat at times. And I was like, is this okay that but I really was learning from it. But I think it's the tip of the iceberg. Would you do another book? Would you continue with another docuseries if this was successful?
I mean, right now I'm in this moment and it's I don't know what the universe is going to throw at me. I am writing a sequel that kind of shows people surviving and thriving that I stand here now, and kind of where surviving my birthright left off in a sense of, and I don't know if that'll ever happen or get it, but for me, it's a healing, again, another empowering thing. And I wrote a children's book recently and illustrated that. And that's again, like going back.
Wait, what's the children's book about?
It's called Joy of Wonder, and she's an alien, and this little lonely entitled girl makes a wish on a star, and Joy comes and they explore life together, but little things like butterflies talking. It's like, it's all about imagination and not anything with phones, and teaching children how to go outside and play again. And it's animated and it's fabulous. And I'm so proud of it. And again, it would be little Casey, that's like how I envision my life. So that was really healing. And it's going to be a series of books. And then also, Ryan, honestly, I would love to help and empower victims. And if that means doing TED Talks or doing any kind of, I'm kind of open in this point to anything that, if it feels good, I'll do it. You know, again, it's like trusting.
Yeah, you couldn't have expected 6 years ago that this was going to happen, you know?
Absolutely not. And again, it's not like I went looking for it or welcomed it. But again, it's once you have that opportunity, what are you going to do with it? And how are you going to help?
Are you nervous about people's reactions to this when it comes out this Friday? Are you nervous about that? Are you going to pay attention? I mean, I don't know what it's like actually having this be your life story and then leaving it open for people to be critical about.
I don't know how I'm going to be. I'm hopeful and optimistic, and know that I've seen the docuseries and it's amazing. And again, so far, I think someone sent me the picture of the side of the building in New York City.
And when wild.
I saw that billboard, right, it was like, whoa, like you don't believe this is happening. So again, it's just, all you can do is hope that it makes a difference in a really positive way, and it helps people realize they're not alone. And again, I'm here to shine a light on things that I think will make a difference. And that's all I can control right now.
No, and I think you did such a beautiful job. I really cannot, and I say I cannot wait to finish this docu-series. I mean, truly, it's such a weird thing to say, but I cannot wait to finish this docu-series. And I got to tell you, I was really nervous to be a part of this because this is somebody that I had known in my real life. And there was a lot of stuff in my head about feeling like a bad person, feeling like a bad friend, potentially. I mean, even though I have not talked to him in a very long time, there was something that I was like, the Army I knew. But after reading all of these accounts and these women coming forward and the bravery and listening to your story, it did, because somebody, my friend Danny was like, oh, I saw you in the, you looked good and all that. I was like, none of this was for me about like attention. I thought this was just a very important story that needed to be told. And I wanted to try to help in any way to get some of these victim stories out there. But I thought I was so relieved to watch it and how well it was handled. And I just thank you so much for your time today and spending so much time with our audience. I hope we can meet on better terms at some time. I'm friends with Lauren and Zed. I mean, and I really, I would love to chat with you in a real way someday. I mean, even though this is real, but thank you for sharing your story. I think this is so important. And I think this really will help people, you know,
and I want to thank you for being a part of it, because again, when I saw you on screen, I know you through the Zen Blonde. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I knew of you and what your involvement was with Army. And again, it's people like you that came forward and spoke your truth. And when you see the outcome of the impact of the docuseries, you're going to be so happy that you are a part of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for even allowing me to be a small part of your story. You guys, the docu-series House of Hammer, Discovery Plus, 3 parts. You are going to binge this all at once, even though I'm telling you, it's going to be a wild ride. So be ready for that. You know, a lot of trigger warnings need to go out when watching this, but it's a very important story. I really highly recommend. I had to teach my parents how to get Discovery Plus just so they can watch it, but I think it is totally worth it, you guys. Please go support this. Please go support Casey, and also go read her book. Also, there's even one with our friend Heather McDonald doing an intro over on Audible and stuff. So I think just go support Casey, go support this story. Make sure to believe women, listen to them. And you guys, I think you're really, really going to get something out of this 3-part docuseries. Casey Hammer, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. Have a great day.